What's up guys, it's James Allen, the out-of-state investor, and today I'm going to go over exactly what not to do when you're renovating a rental property. Now I've gone through the process of renovating a rental property many times now, so by watching this video, you're going to learn how to avoid some of the most common mistakes that new real estate investors make when it comes to renovating a rental property, as well as some renovations that have a great return that will definitely surprise you. But before I get started, go ahead and smash that like button to help the channel grow. Also subscribe and click the notification bell to get alerted for more videos like this. And with that said, let's get started. So about 5 years ago, there was this guy and he just started getting into real estate investing. He had a full-time job and spent all of his extra time in the morning and evening consuming as much knowledge as he could related to real estate. He read loads of books, listened to podcasts, took online courses, attended real estate meetups, watched YouTube videos, read blog posts and articles, basically anything he could do to consume knowledge. He did it. After about 1.5 years of doing it, he purchased his first rental property, which was a single family house. Things went really well with that property. Rents came in on a regular basis. The tenant had lived there for a long time, and so naturally, he started looking ahead to what was next. Well, about 6 months later, he ended up purchasing a triplex which needed some work doing to it. Now, he had never managed a rehab up until now, but he knew that value add was the way to go when it came to real estate. Now, about 10 months later, one of the units went vacant, so he hired a contractor to do some work on the unit and had his property management oversee the work as well because he was out of state. And with that, he started to renovate one of the units in his triplex. He did almost everything he could to make it a gorgeous looking unit. He put in beautiful granite countertops, crown molding, gorgeous glass tile backsplash. It was now a great looking unit. Well, unfortunately for him, he had overspent on this rehab and spent about 33 grand making this thing look immaculate, although it did include adding an extra bedroom. It brought the rents up from $525 a month up to $870 a month, which is not bad, but what he didn't realize is he could have achieved the same growth for a lot less money. The crown molding was not necessary for a rental. Glass tile is way overpriced and a simple ceramic tile would have saved at least a few $100 with the same result. And the granite counters were one of the more expensive types of granite. Now there are some tier 1 granites that would have looked great still while saving this guy about $30 a square foot. Overall though, he got about a 12.5% return on his investment for the rehab, which is not bad, but knowing that he could have done better on this rehab and gotten more like an 18 to 20% return is what makes this a great lesson learned. Well, if you haven't figured it out already, this guy I'm talking about is me. This was my first rehab and I got so caught up trying to make this thing look like the Mona Lisa, I grew an attachment to it, but in reality, it was simply a multifamily unit in a C+ area, and this was a classic case of overimprovement, and I learned so much from this first rehab. So with that said, I want to share with you some tips when you're rehabbing your rental property, because rehabbing a rental property is a lot different than rehabbing your own home. Rehabbing your own home for most people is all about what feels and looks good to you, and that's about where the strategy stops. With rental property renovations, every single decision you make has to be an economical one. In other words, if it's not going to increase your bottom line, durability, or liability protection, then it's not going to make sense to do it. To be successful in this, you have to distance yourself emotionally from the project and make it all about the numbers. So let's take a look at some common mistakes people make when renovating their rental properties so that hopefully you can avoid making these same mistakes. The first mistake you need to avoid when renovating a rental property is hiring the wrong contractor. Good contractors are one of the hardest team members to come by. The problem with contractors is they're either too expensive or too unreliable. Trying to find that guy that's in the middle that can provide you pretty good quality, on time, and at a good price is what you really want. But finding that contractor is a lot harder than it seems. First thing you should always do is check if your contractor is licensed, bonded, and insured. If they're going to do a medium or large size job for me, then being licensed, bonded, and insured is an absolute must to protect me from a liability standpoint, but it also tells me that they're more than likely not the kind of person to cut corners or take shortcuts. It also gives you something to hold them accountable for if they do a bad job. Now, what I mean by that is you could always file a complaint to the state licensing board if, for example, they didn't stick to your contract or if they ran away with your money, and they could end up losing their license. It's more incentive for them to stay true to their their word. Also, if they say they're licensed, don't just take their word for it. That is one of the biggest mistakes I made in the beginning. Is the first contractor I worked with told me that he was licensed, and even his references confirmed it, and I just took him at his word. Turns out he had a builder's license from another state, which is not the same as a general contractor's license, and he ended up messing up the flooring he installed, which I had to pay for and redo all over again. The good news though is that you can actually look it up online for most states, if not all of them. You just need their name or license number, and you can verify through the state government website if they're actually licensed or not, and if their license is active or expired. Also, be sure to ask for a copy of their license and a COI, which is a certificate of insurance. Also, as an extra layer of due diligence on top of all of this, check all online reviews, ask for references, actually call those references, and I'll also check with the BBB, which is the Better Business Bureau, in case their company is listed there, and see if there's any formal complaints that have been filed against them. And the website for that is bbb.org. Now, if the rehab is a smaller job, then I'm actually okay with them not being licensed, but I'm still going to check references and any reviews I can find. Another thing to do when hiring a contractor is to make sure you don't just get one bid. Get a minimum of 3 bids on your job, at least until you have a contractor that you trust and you know well. This will help you to know that you're getting a fair price, especially if you don't have any knowledge of what the going rates are for different types of jobs. A few months ago, I actually had a few contractors come over to a house of mine to give me a quote on interior paint for doors, trim, walls, and ceiling. The contractor I went with ended up doing it for about $1.75 a square foot, whereas the most expensive guy was around $4.50 a square foot, which is way overpriced. But if I just looked at the reviews, the guy charging $4.50 a square foot had tons of 5-star reviews, and I'm sure he does an amazing job painting. But for a rental property, you don't need Picasso painting your house. Someone who can do a pretty good job for an affordable price is the best way to go. The second mistake to avoid is a lack of preparation. When you're working with your contractor, the worst thing you can do is to come to him without a plan. There's an old saying that if you fail to plan, then plan to fail. This is definitely true when it comes to rehabbing. Have an idea of what you want to do before coming to your contractor. Do not go up to your contractor and say, I want to renovate this property, so what should I do next? That's going to be really annoying for them to work with, and it's very likely you'll end up spending more than you need to. So instead, put together what's called a scope of work. This is just a list of all the work that you want done on your project, and when I do this, I'm organizing my list section by section. So I'll have all my plumbing tasks together, all my electrical tasks together, all my carpentry tasks together, and this makes it easier on the contractor, and they'll appreciate the detailed work. Having a scope of work makes it easier to estimate your costs more accurate when you're asking for a bid. Also, check with your contractor on when they're available to start, because some contractors may be so busy that they may not be able to get to your project for the next 6 months, and that would be time and money wasted for you. So better to plan ahead and see what their schedule is like before signing any contracts. The third mistake to avoid is not putting it in writing. Your chances of getting screwed on a handshake deal are way more likely than if you were to get it in writing. Now, there's many things you want to include in your contract, like the agreed price and scope of work, the date you plan to start the work, the date you plan to finish the work, if there will be a penalty of some kind for falling behind, if there will be a reward for finishing early, that there'll be pulling permits if it's needed for your job, and what the payment schedule looks like. You know, whether it's like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, or whatever you agree on, I like to split it up into more payments the bigger the job is, and pay them after they finish a specific task from the scope of work. But whatever you do, don't pay your contractor in full upfront, or even as much as 50% unless it's a small job. You shouldn't be paying any more than 1/3 of the total cost up front for a medium to large job, and don't pay that last installment until all the work is complete. Now, there's definitely other things to consider including in your contract, but I recommend consulting with a real estate attorney for more help with that. The fourth mistake I see a lot of newbie investors make is over-improving. Like I said in my story, it's so easy to grow an attachment to making your place look as nice as possible, but the key is doing it in the most economically sound way. First, you need to recognize what kind of area you're in. Are you in an A-class area or maybe a C-class area? That's going to be the first way to determine what level of finishes you want to go with. Secondly, you want to look at your neighborhood norm. This is just what all the other rentals are doing around you. Are they all going with laminate countertops countertops? Then quartz might not make sense. Are they all using the most basic black and white appliances? Then maybe that stainless steel fridge with the French doors and the ice maker is not necessary. Look at what everyone else is doing around you to evaluate what finishes are appropriate for your rental. I'll normally do right about what the neighborhood norm is and bump it up just one step higher from what everyone else is doing because I want my house to stand out a bit from what the competition is and attract a better quality tenant. But I'm not going to get too carried away to where my house doesn't even resemble any of the other houses in the area. It's definitely a balance, but analyzing your area and your neighborhood norm is the way to avoid over-improving. The fifth mistake to avoid when renovating a rental property is not appealing to the masses. You have to understand that the main goal with a rental property is to appeal to as many people as you can in the most economically sound way. I want my renovation choices to be liked by about 90% of the population. So if you're painting the interior of your house, don't be painting the walls red, orange, yellow, or green. Keep the colors neutral like beige, grays, whites, light blue, and if you're putting a kitchen backsplash, don't choose a crazy unique tile that only you and a few others would like. Instead, choose something timeless and classic like a 3x6 white subway tile. That appeals to 90% of people and you can never go wrong with that. Appealing to the masses will shorten your vacancy time and allow you to get top dollar on your rental property. The sixth mistake to avoid is don't cheap out. Just like over improving a property can be tempting, so can cheaping out. It can be very tempting to just look at the dollar amount and always go with the cheapest option. But there's a difference between price and cost. Price is what you pay for the item, but the cost is what it means for you in the long term. For instance, it may be cheaper to buy and install some carpet and pad throughout most of the house, but long term, you're going to have to replace that carpet every few years or so. So some better choices would be luxury vinyl plank, vinyl tile, or even just some regular tile. This may be pricier up front, but they're all much more durable products that can save you much more money over the long run and possibly even bring you in more rent. So while the price is higher, the total cost over the long run might actually be lower. So make sure to always evaluate price against total cost when making these decisions. Now obviously going with like a tier 1 granite instead of a tier 3 granite isn't really cheaping out. That's just saving money because tier 1 isn't going to be any more durable than tier 3 and it probably isn't going to generate more rent either. So in that situation, going with the cheaper option makes more sense, but just make sure you always weigh out price versus cost when you're making your decisions. The seventh and final mistake to avoid is forgetting all about the little things. You want to make sure your rental property is operating like a well-oiled machine. Many times new investors overlook some of the little things to focus purely on finishes and making a unit look nice. And while that's important, you really want to take care of the little things such as changing out your air filters. This will help you get the most out of your HVAC unit. Cleaning out your gutters. If you don't clean these out, it can easily cause water damage to the house, so keeping the gutters clean can save you some big money down the road. Also, cutting off any tree limbs that are hanging over your roof and removing any vegetation that's touching the siding on your house. These are the little things that don't cost much up front and they may not increase the amount of rent you can charge, but by taking care of them, you are avoiding these much larger expenditures that you would experience if you didn't take care of them, which is why taking care of these little things can sometimes end up being the biggest return on investment over the long run. So be sure not to overlook them. So that covers 7 of the most common mistakes new investors make when renovating a rental property. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to smash that like button and definitely subscribe to the channel if you like the video and you want to see more real estate and personal finance videos like this. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or thoughts, and check out my Instagram page at The Out of State Investor. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.